Hey folks, welcome back to my February practice reflections and favourites. Those who haven't joined me in this before, heads up, this is a chatty video, usually a long video, so get comfy, settle in, and hopefully there'll be something that you enjoy listening to within this. This is me really sharing my practice, which is something that I enjoy looking back on as well as sharing. As always, I think I'm going to start with my cards and rune of the month, which hopefully won't be too repetitive for those who follow me on Instagram, because I do it on both platforms now. So for February, as part of my year ahead spread, I pulled the Hierophant. This is from the 𝗪𝗁 Tarot. From the Memento Mori Oracle, I got coins, and then my rune is 𝗪𝗁𝗪𝗁𝗪𝗁. I hate pronouncing them. I feel like I'm never doing them justice. I'm practicing. But that's the rune anyway. And over on my Instagram, I actually shared 4 invitations that I feel that the Hierophant speaks to as a whole, because they, to me, are somewhat of a card that can fall into a very specific idea, and one that I feel is quite confining when the card comes up in various circumstances where that just doesn't make sense. I don't like my cards to feel boxed in, and that's not to say I'm someone who reads every card as any possible thing out there, because I don't. It would be quite chaotic, but I do exist in quite a stretched view of the cards as a whole. I enjoy seeing how various situations, people, circumstances, even the visuals perhaps, unfold different layers of the cards. In particular with these 3, they really kind of meshed together this month in a way where I didn't really peel them apart much. I did study 𝗪𝗁𝗪𝗁 individually because I am studying the 𝗪𝘁𝗁𝗁𝗁 runes. That is an ongoing process. It keeps me very busy. Eventually I will be able to read them together, multiple runes, that's the aim. It's my slowest experience of study ever, and I do think that a part of that is to do with cognitive changes for me, but I hear a lot of that fed back from other individuals over the years, so it definitely doesn't feel like a kind of isolated incident. You can let me know. But in terms of the way that these 3 really showed up through the month and intertwined together, I think I referred to it as a tapping into collective memory and collective knowledge, but I don't mean collective as in everyone and anyone. In this particular instance, it was very familial and sharing in things that I haven't really spoken to before, but they have this rooted impact and kind of going back to origin, and where some of these things were born, where they existed in a heightened phase, kind of having a process of them by letting them out and moving with them. It was really interesting. This is all going to sound a bit abstract, but it's quite personal. So whilst I'm happy to share the idea around it, I'm not happy to put out the specifics. There was like this recollection. I think that a part of it was consciously processing it out loud, as well as my unconscious has been really active in these places. So much so that, along with some just nightmarish sleep deprivation for like a week of February, where in the end I was starting to see things. I was so tired, and I'm an insomniac since as young as I can remember, so I'm talking real sleep deprivation here, and I was having a lot of unconscious content all of a sudden like really rise in my dreams in particular, and those stories, they had information to give me. And I know that that possibly sounds like a really strange layer to the Hierophant, but they genuinely did. And by working with those, both alone and in this, like I said, this intimate kind of space, I was really able to see some things clearly, to release some things, to understand some things, to further some of just where I'm at. Also these three together, and interestingly, because when I pull the coins, I definitely don't associate them particularly with financial aspects straight away. But I did, as many people know, a lot of restructuring last month, well, just prior to February actually, for my Patreon. And honestly, this has been really well received, but also I feel like there was this internal block that kind of lifted, and now I'm having this massive flow of ideas and inspiration again. So all these, it's like coins are raining in on me metaphorically, which has been really, really nice. I feel like I have been willing to take my experience, or if you want to call it knowledge, and value it more so and back it, you know, really stand behind it, put it into the world in a way where I'm having more faith in myself, showing more confidence, and kind of sitting with any discomfort and challenge that might arise in that, but in a different way where it's not kind of taking over. Interestingly enough, material wise, I released my spread book into the world as well, which I'll mention later, but that was really well received as well. And so the flow of money and just exchange, conversations, connections, things like that that have been occurring have really picked up. And as much as that's not the be all and end all money wise anyway, it's still necessary. Materials are still very much needed in the physical realm, and I think that it's been not only necessary for me as I navigate supporting myself through like just health challenges and continuously changing circumstances, but it's also been like a boost. And yeah, I've really got quite a lot from these. And when I was working with them, after I spoke about the 4 invitations of the Hierophant, it wasn't really exactly what I had anticipated. But as many people will know, when I pull my year ahead spread, I don't look into the meaning in advance. I pull it, I take a picture. Obviously, I have an overview snap in my mind and I just leave it be. And I have the cards and the rune out every month so that I am working with them. I am able to study the rune, which helps me learn about it and keeps my study going through the whole year, which otherwise it would potentially get dropped sometimes. So it's kind of a commitment to that. And also consider the invitations of these, but not let them direct it, and see how they unfurl, which in some ways opens new facets of the cards to me as well, which I really enjoy. So I don't know if that's going to make much sense to people, because it's I can't remember exactly what I wrote on Instagram. It was probably made more sense and was probably more concise, but there you have it. That's them. But I have decks now, a few more than last month. What shall I start with? Let's just get these 2 out of the way really quickly, because then I can put them back where they're meant to be. No surprises. Still working with the Fallen Angels. Still working with the Trinofi. Still keeping them out on my desk. My desk? My altar. It's kind of both, to be fair. You know. Still using them for all of the things that I was using them for last month. At the moment, I have been working with 𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗀𝘀𝗀. We're going to roll with the pronunciation, folks. For over several weeks, and new chapter just feels so fitting. Like, there has been such a internal shift. It's not perhaps mirrored so much in my usual day-to-day, but certainly this internal shift that's then feeding into some of my plans, some of my mid to longer term goals. Feel like there's a bit of fruiting going on from the seeds, you know, which is really, really nice. And I'd say it feels overdue, but none of us are due anything, but it does feel overdue. It really does. So I'm enjoying the hell out of those two, just always at the moment. I don't see them going away anywhere. Next, I'll share these two together because I use them together a lot the first few weeks of February, and I use them to read for people in my stories on Instagram at one point as well. And this is the Dark Days Tarot and the Reclaim Oracle, and I think that they work beautifully together, like just really, really well. It is definitely supported by a nice visual. That wasn't actually why I chose to use them together. The Dark Days is one of the ones that I had committed to using more of in 2023, so I wanted to get around to implementing that and picking a deck from the ones that I discussed in that video that felt timely, because sometimes I do feel very seasonally affected in regards to my decks as well. And what's interesting is I would then have years ago said, oh, I associate them with this season, but that does change. So I do think it's an element. Like Fae decks I tend to not use until spring has come in a little more, but because obviously my Victorian Fairies tarot was on that video, although it's more Victorian fairy and less fae per se. But these two worked really well together because, of course, the Reclaim Oracle is very open for interpretation. In particular, there is just one word and, well, one feeling, one sense that we have to then inform the tarot. And I think that because the Dark Days Tarot for me is quite busy, and I don't just mean artistically, because actually looking at it, it probably looks quite simple to most people, but I get quite a lot of information and hits in particular from the artwork. I find it to be something that I ingest in quite a poetic fashion, and lots goes on, and I sometimes think how I would write. It's really hard to explain. Like I think in notes. I kind of note take in my head sometimes. And then I get all these feelings as well from the artwork in particular. And it always was a really strong deck for me, and perhaps I wasn't up for that as much when I got it, because I have used it, but not as much as I thought I would. Anyway, this is quite a hard hitter just because, you know, if you're really getting to the crux of working with an emotion and being present with it, then the Reclaim Oracle is really going to help you do that. And it's very balanced in that it is got just about every degree of emotion in there, you know, from whatever your personal favourite emotion is all the way down to like your very least favourite. So I needed to have nothing more involved with these two. Like, I don't feel like I would necessarily have these two as a coupling and then have a rune with them. That might change. But I've been really enjoying it together anyway. And it just so happens in a weird... I can't think of how to finish that sentence, to be honest. The cardstock is really similar anyway, and I'm a very tactile person, so while that doesn't matter at all, I do enjoy the experience. So it almost it almost makes it feel nicer, which is so strange, but I am very tactile, very sense aware. Yeah, really enjoyed these two together. I feel like I'll have more to say about them when I've used them a bit more, but I used them for a couple of weeks and then mostly had a break. I did also use the Reclaim in the actual tarot podcast video with the deck that I'm going to show next. So if you're not aware that I have a podcast with my friend Tamara, then look for Actual Tarot Podcast in the YouTubes and you'll find us. So this is the other deck, and I freaking love this bag. I had this bag specially made because, and I'll put the creator in the link below because I love her. Love her. She's become a sweet friend and is a very talented human being. As you can see, I have lots of her bags. Lots of them. I really love the animals because obviously it's a big part of my practice. But originally she had the snake on a normal size tarot bag and it was on a green, I think. And I needed a larger one for this deck and also wanted red because look at the backs. So this is freaking divine. And this is the Story Medicine Tarot Animal Woman edition. And honestly, this deck is going to be one of those ones that ends up, I'm almost certain this is going to be one of those ones that ends up in my, you know, standout decks of 2023, top favourites, most memorable, whatever you want to call it. It's, my cat's decided it's dinner time, which it's not. Sorry. I've completely lost my train of thought again, but this deck is absolutely sumptuous. It's quite a big compliment to my practice because, as people know, I work with animals just all the time, both in the physical realm. So I do a lot of stuff with the wildlife in my garden, etc. I do a lot of eco education, I don't know if that's what you want to call it, whatever it is. And then I use them much more in the spirit, archetypal and metaphorical or folkloric sense. And this deck has all of that in it. It feels like it just embodies all of it. She shapeshifts into various animals through the suits. There's this epic ass video that she did about the deck that you should definitely check out if you have the deck. It has these really interesting keywords or phrases on it, but more so I got this because I wanted to do some more embodiment working. I wanted to do some more challenging stuff in general to help me get past a big block, not solely. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the background. This cannot be just taken down to a tarot practice, in my humble opinion, but as an extension of it, to really get past like what I kept thinking was a 7-year, but it's not, it's like a 9-year or an 8-year, something thereabouts, like trauma point that kind of had a lot of really heavy stuff unfold in a short period of time and was like the trajectory point for my changing life experience. And that in itself created some stuff, but it also brought up a lot of old stuff that I either had worked on, but sometimes stuff comes up again because we're human and that's how it works when shit goes down, or that I had pushed to the side away and then it had to come back up and said, I'm not gone. It's been such a powerful deck. I use this on the, like I said, the Actual Tarot podcast for this month. We do live readings there. We read for ourselves and we encourage you to join along with us with the spread that we're using or the exercise we're doing. It's really fun. I personally love hearing people interpret their own cards, and I mean that because I like hearing interpretations of cards full stop, but I find when it's actually in a reading with context, it interests me even more than just like a standard, this is how I see the card. Because I could give you a, this is how I see the 8 of Swords without context, but contextually it could change over and over and over and over again. There will still be many solid themes throughout that, but like it's the nuances that interest me and the interweaving, you know, how we understand cards that are that tend towards nicer experiences and feelings when they come up in really difficult placements, and vice versa. Like, I like all of that stuff. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to create a podcast in the first place. And I use this deck and it hasn't gone away since. What was interesting is, in that video, I think I said that I had saved this deck solely for myself. I hadn't read for anyone else with it. Didn't particularly have an intention. And then literally days later, I just had this feeling like, no, this is now a deck that I need to read for other people with, as and when it feels right, when it's gonna be the right person. Like, a very, very visceral okay, like, it's time. Which was kind of surreal. And days later, I had a Sacred Space session. Say that 3 times fast. Which is something I offer on one of my top Patreon tiers. And in that, there are many ways to use that session, but one of them is to have a tarot reading. And the person, out of the few decks that I brought based on their preferences and what we were going to be exploring, chose this one. And as far as I understand it, it was just as impactful for them. It was just a fucking, yeah, I cannot share context, of course, but there was things that happened with the cards and we were like, damn. So it was very cool. I am so in love with this deck, so in love with it. I want to fangirl about it forever. Like, it's so good, so good. And then finally, the Anima Mundi tarot, which I've kind of been using as a... Oh, it's not finally, there's one more. I will be quicker. This is what I like to call my quick draw at the moment. This deck was on my list for the longest time, by the way, which I'm sure I've already said. But I'm just getting to know it, having fun with it. And when I say getting to know it, I am so damn familiar with all of the pictures from wanting it for so long and seeing it a lot back in its heyday. And by that, I don't mean it's not popular now, but of course there are peaks and troughs and trends in what we regularly see in the community, especially when things are new. I wanted to establish my own experience with it and not just the things that I had built up in my mind over years of seeing it. So that's what I'm doing. It's not anything more than that at the moment. It's been really fun. It's great to share in stories. I take it to my parents' house and use it there as well. And it's all very just simple. 1, 2, I don't even think I've pulled 3 cards from it, but just to bond with it, because like I said, I had seen it a lot and I feel like sometimes there's this almost flooding of just seeing something so much. And thankfully it hasn't had that experience of like, when I got it, I was like, oh, when I got this, I was obsessed. The cardstock, oh, it's so nice to my hands. It's so, in my experience anyway, it's so chronic pain friendly, the cardstock. It's really good. It's so superficial, but it makes me happy. And it feels like it's going to last as well. So bonus, right? It is an interesting combination of pips and, well, I say, you know, not Marseille pips, but just pips, and then more scenic pips. And that doesn't bother me per se, but I find it to be an interesting choice. But I am loving this deck. I just don't have anything else to say about it at the moment. Like, not everything is grand or deep, or it's been good. I'm looking forward to it. I will continue to use it. And how could I forget? This is on my altar anyway. This is the Lioness Oracle Tarot. I used this for... what was I doing? This month we worked with 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏, which I completely forgot to talk about in the beginning of the video and my monthly wrap up. I don't actually have an oracle deck with Toad in, so I didn't have oracle representation of them. I have a tarot deck with them in, but I didn't want to take the card out. So yeah, that's possibly why. We did some really cool workings with Toad actually, and I found out some really interesting things about what I can do in my local area as well, because they are heavily impacted at this time of year when they're emerging by just the roads and, you know, the things that usually impact animals by human design. But I was using some of the themes that we were working with through Toad. I like to explore tarot cards through those themes, and cards that perhaps are all connected because they have elements of those themes within them. And I was talking about empowerment and the development of self-worth, which is different to self-care. There were elements of that as well, but predominantly it was empowerment and self-worth and how we align with that and the kind of therapeutic model behind it. And then I wanted to talk about some cards that I felt could speak to this. Some sort of invitations and ways to work with that, and they're kind of tarot chats that I'm really enjoying hosting at the moment. This was a deck that I chose because it very much has an interesting selection of, I don't know, like an otherworldly feel or a very big universal feel, and then these really kind of microcosmic moments between people. I love the mix of feline energy in here with the roses. So, you know, you've got the rose petals and the thorns, you've got this beautiful idea of felines, but then you've got the reality of, like, especially wild cats, which is, not all of them are wild cats, but predominantly. These two are adorable. And I just remembered how much I freaking love this deck. And when I say remembered, it's not that I don't use it, but I had put it away for my work with 𝗺𝗿𝗄𝗧 in particular. And I hadn't really had it out in other capacities or use for quite some time. And the cardstocks are very thick and very heavy, and it's large-ish. So it is what it is. Unfortunately, that impacts my hands. But this deck is such a connective one for me that I wouldn't pass on it because of that. So I've had it out since, and this strength card gives me so many feelings every time. Sometimes it makes me want to cry, sometimes it makes me feel like really seen and powerful, and yeah, just all of the feelings. So I've been having a blast with this deck again. It's so fucking strange. It really is. And I've said this time and time again, but I will say it again for the people in the back or the new folks, that I definitely feel like when people create decks for a specific moment in time with a specific intention. So I know that Alejandra created this whilst grieving and moving through healing and the facets of that. I do feel like there's a bit of it that gets infused in the energy of that creation, and it's something that I picked up on before I was aware of it. And I really feel that that's one of the ways that it shows up most in my practice. And I'm not saying that that would be the case for everyone or that it's a must, but it's definitely something that I've noticed with a few decks in particular like that. So one deck that we're going to have a quick discussion about, which I feel like I wanted to not bother. And the reason being is, I like to share my opinions and experiences of things. I can't be bothered with the offended potential that these things can create, because it simply boils down to, like, for whatever reasons, I didn't like it, and that's okay. So it was the 𝗵𝗁𝗃 Oracle, and I didn't open the cards. I worked through aspects of the book, because the deck was never on my list originally. In the end, it added very little to my practice. that sort of therapeutic work is my bread and butter, obviously. So I was mostly interested in the ecological elements, and I wanted a bit more of it, to be honest, than the other stuff. It's got a lot of content in it, which was really lovely, but I found a lot of it to be within the 4 pages, say, per offering. I found it to be very repetitive. And there were some really great bits, but the great bits felt like much of what I already did in practice. And then I was sort of really seeking out the ecological aspects. There were not enough that I could add to my practice on top of it that it was worth keeping. Like it wasn't. I'm not short of decks. Like I said, it just wasn't for me in the end. It felt like, oh, I already do this. I didn't obviously read every single one, so I am sure there are some absolute gems in there. I won't have a deck to show you and tell you that, oh, I worked with this in private and this is how it went, because it didn't fit. Moving on, I want to do a couple of mentions of things, and then there's one other thing that I was going to share about my practice, and I think that's pretty much about it, because this is getting long. My lovely friend has been working his tiny butt off for months, but in particular February was kind of the build-up of the final push for this. And because he is my bestie, I have been privy to a lot of the process. So that did take up a part of February, but also I want to shout it out because it is, as of the day that I am filming, which is the 28th of Feb, that's my tiny drum roll, it's on Kickstarter, and that is the Black Salt Tarot made by the lovely Logan of Larkin Legend. And I'm going to show you it now. Isn't it freaking glorious? It's so good. The aesthetic, obviously, in and of itself is just delicious. But of course, many of you will know that I have nothing against getting the deck just because it's a pretty face, but like, I've got to want to use it as well, you know. Of course I'm biased because this is my friend and I love him, so there's that. But what I will say is, of course, for me, firstly, I use tarot a lot more than Lenormand. I can't read Lenormand. I basically do my own thing with it and annoy people who read Lenormand. But I only have decks by Logan or Skullgarden anyway. So I'm really excited for this beautiful creation that will actually be put into use in my practice, because, you know, I'm a tarot and oracle card person at heart with a dash of playing cards. But also I freaking love pippish decks. Someone else was saying pips with feeling. I've heard a few people say it. I mean, that's my jam, right? Things like the Marigold Tarot and Antique Anatomy Tarot, the Wooden Tarot. I suppose, although it starts to get more scenic into the Anima Mundi, but you get the kind of vibe, right? I have the Trinofi Della Luna, but the pip version on my wish list. I love my illustrated pips. That will never go anywhere, but I'd really like the Marseille one as well. And I feel like that has some hints of other stuff going on in it, even if they're minuscule. So I think that Logan has particularly outdone himself, and I'm just really fucking proud, so I wanted to put it in the video for you to see. And his Kickstarter link is in the thingy below. The other thing that I wanted to share, really from just a joyful place, it's really not meant to be promotion, but like, fuck it, is that I released my first ever ebook in February. February the 1st came out. My tarot spread ebook. It's got, I want to say 27 spreads. It's either 27 plus the bonus one or 27 including the bonus. I can't remember. Great brain. And they were previously Patreon exclusives, but I realised that not everyone is in a space or desire for Patreon. I love tarot spread creating. Whilst I read for people in a very free flow way, I enjoy using spreads for myself. I think spreads are can be very empowering for individual practice in particular. So I decided to create an ebook, and I think it looks the nuts. If I'm honest, it's been really well received. The community just blew me away with how well received it was. And yeah, I'm so proud of myself because getting it together and ensuring that there were solid write-ups for most of the spreads, because most of them require it, was something that I was very passionate about. I also wanted to make sure that I offered enough guidance and held you and gave you context between each spread, but that I didn't then just give away all of my Patreon content. So they are reworked. Some of the bits that I say about them are new but concise, so it's not overwhelming. It's not like you've got to read a whole book, and at the same time it should be like a solid support throughout for each spread. And there is quite the variety. A lot of them are self-developmental, but you've got some other ones in there as well, including one more focused on spirit work. And yeah, it was just so good to finally be like, yes, here it is. It's out in the world now. So that was a real high for me in February as well. And I will say that February has been full of emotions, but I have had some really nice high points, and I hadn't felt like that very often at all for a very long time. And my health and pain really can weigh that down. So that was, yeah, that was cool. 2 YouTubers and their videos, because one of the things that I love on YouTube in particular is hearing about people's practice. They're not always easy videos to film, I don't think. And as you know from these ones, whilst I call them reflections and favourites as well, it really is me sharing a portion of my practice. There is an element of vulnerability to it, and obviously finding the space for each of us as to what's private and what we feel like we want to share. Anyway, 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗄𝗧 did a video which I'm going to link below, where it's called It's Okay, Don't Force It, which was a practice discussion. I'm not mentioning this just because she mentions me in it. I wasn't expecting that at all. She was talking about someone entirely different and a different part of her process and practice, and then she just gave the most beautiful shout out, so thank you. But genuinely, I love the idea of those videos and hearing about what people are changing, what they're releasing, what they've tried, what seemed like a nice idea but wasn't for them, and what's actually inspiring and lighting them up. And that's something I try to incorporate here. So I really enjoyed that video. Definitely check it out. Also check out her poetry video, because that shit is just so beautifully moving. And then the other one was a video by Jess. Jess, I know you've got cards in your tag name. I'm going to tag you below, but it's gone from my brain. Jess with cards. Oh, Jess, I'm sorry. We talk. We talk often, but you're Jess to me. So Jess made a video about, I think she called it Rumination on the 3 of Earth video. So the 3 of Earths, the 3 of Pentacles, I believe. It was in the Dreams of Gaia tarot, which I don't have, although I would love. Apparently there's the normal, you know, larger copy now in matte. And I would love that. But anyway, again, you really get into the grit of just someone sharing their practice, their experience with a card, how they're working with it, all of those personalised nuances that you don't get necessarily from picking up a meaning tarot book. And it was so good. And often those types of videos are requested by so many people that are like content consumers. And then when it boils down to it, and I know this from having conversations with people and my own experience as well, is they're like the least watched videos on each of our channels. So you know, people vote with their engagement. So it's a very strange place to be when you get asked for something and then you share it and it's like, wah, wah, wah. I'm not suggesting that Marlena's or Jessie's videos didn't do well. I haven't looked. But it's just something I was aware of that I wanted to add on, because these videos are so solid. They're great. I really enjoyed them. So thank you both for sharing your practice with us, because it was very cool. One other thing that I did in practice this month that was very fun, and I did decide to share. Sometimes I film things just so I can watch them back and they remain just for me. I know I'm not the only person who does that as well. And then occasionally I'll share it. And I was candle scrying, so candle wax scrying in this instance. I have kept this like this to show you for the video. So the ritual elements are still in the bottom, but predominantly I wanted to read the story of the wax, and oh my gosh, was there a story. So I videoed parts of the process. It had like these 2 prongs. I will add it in if I can, but it's a portrait video, not landscape. So we'll have to see, but these 2 prongs at one point where it's split in the middle and it looked like the Eye of Sauron. It was just such an interesting process of like this story unfolding. You can't do this with all candles because some of them don't burn like that. I have candles that burn really neatly, so the only way to do any sort of wax scrying with them would be to drop them in water. I don't mind doing that, but I prefer to do it this way. I'm gonna add this in quickly as well. This is by another friend of mine who predominantly creates wands, but also sometimes creates tarot bags, like sunglasses bags, charm bags, so they're all different sizes obviously, and scrunchies. She is called Wheeler's Wand. I saw her post some fabrics that she had bought in her stories on Instagram, and I am big on foxes, like big. I have a glorious fox bag from my other friend creator. I actually purchased both the fox bags with my own money. I have been gifted some, but these ones I purchased. It is my partner and I's 11th anniversary in March, but right at the beginning of March. And when she posted this material, and it was near this one, I said, oh my gosh, are you making a bag out of that? And she said, I can if you want me to. So I, for want of a better term, commissioned this, I suppose. And it was an unexpected but great addition. Was she sent me a little picture once she put the bag together saying, do you want cream, grey or black string? As you can imagine, each went, but I really love the idea of grey. I do get the cream ones dirty. It's just me, okay? And I think that the grey is perfection. So yes, this will have a tarot deck in it very soon, and I freaking love it. And other than that, we've gone back, my partner and I, and both restarted Zelda Breath of the Wild, because number 2 comes out in May, I want to say. And very much just the last couple of days, but it is in February, so I will mention it, I've returned to playing Pokemon Violet. The glitches in the game started to irritate me even a little bit after after a while, but also I've been working my ass off and not really had the energy and mental capacity for gaming by the evening. But I had a little bit of a second wind. I will say I'm not very far in Zelda, and mostly I've just watched my partner play, which I actually find really peaceful. He does well with me when it comes to that, because I'll just sit there and happily watch him play. Yeah, it's just nice to hang out and just relax. So, I don't know, I'm weird. So yeah, thank you for sticking with me. If you did, oh my gosh, thank you. I will be back with VRs and hashtags and other stuff. But until then, bye.